Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
I just think you think of what they're trying to do and build to think of not just this season and next season, but you're thinking of sustainability.
Right.
And that's a big thing coming in that Jamila and Sydney spoke about from the roster construction standpoint, and then as well, too, from putting the team together on the floor and how they were going to play from the coaching standpoint. And I think when you look at Sonia, she just brings more than one factor. She's not just a shooter. She's not just a ball handler. She's not just a defender. And also you think of the fact that you had to somehow, in some way, fill the void that you have with Ariel Atkins in moving to get these picks to Chicago, 3-and-D type of player who really just over the course of her 7 years in Washington built a really strong resume and career. And I think right off the bat, you get that from Sonia with the way she can shoot the ball. She can attack off the dribble, but she also is such a fiery and fierce defender. She's not someone that you can just walk all over. So I think that's going to be a really great piece for them. And also you think of the fact you have a Brittany Sykes who is a long and lengthy defender. Yeah. Now you've got her a little bit more help as well, too, that when you made that move for Atkins, you didn't necessarily know what it would look like, how the pieces would look coming back with not knowing 100% who would be declaring for the draft this summer. Now you have an idea of what that could look like with Sykes and Citron potentially playing together. You've got a nice little defensive backcourt there.
For sure. And actually, as we were talking through it after the pick, this is your Ariel Atkins starter kit popped into my mind. And of course, part of this is timelines. Ariel deserves to go somewhere where she can be competing sooner than I think the Mystics are looking to, just because they're resetting a lot of things, new front office, new coaching staff, all that. That said, they finished 9th in the league last year. It's not like this team can't compete in the way the W is structured too. We're seeing if, especially a player like Amoore, playing point guard in the league as a rookie is tough, but she is an older player, and I wonder how much that played into it. It's something that we'll hear a little bit more about over the next few days as the draft picks are introduced and Jamila and Sydney talk a little bit more. But I totally agree on Citron and kind of where she fits, where you just go, it doesn't matter what else they do. And that's something that you and I are going to talk about here in a second, is kind of the larger context of this entire draft and how this league is going to be reshaping itself over the next year. I don't care if she's the only player left and you rebuild with 11 new players. Sonia Citron will fit any roster based off her skill set. And not that I'm wishing for a total reset. And obviously the Mystics are going to have some players, the Aaliyah Edwards, et cetera, that are here no matter what. They've got them on rookie contracts, so all the vets will be changing around. But it doesn't matter who comes in, who you recruit in free agency, who you trade for. Sonia Citron is the type of player that fits with anybody. And I kind of wonder, even before Olivia Miles went back, before we knew who was going to be in this draft, with one of those two picks, I feel like Citron probably was someone they targeted all along.
Well, you also look at the fact there's a reason why Citron was on all of the mock drafts so high. She was always, when you look at the mock draft, she was always in the top 5 or 6. I don't recall seeing a mock draft in the last month and a half that had her lower than maybe a 6 or a 7. So that says a lot about who she is, I think, not just as a player, because you also have to keep in mind, yes, these are pro athletes now once they've been drafted, but you're also looking at the person. You're looking at the type of character that you're bringing in. And I know that's something that this front office is truly looking for and really takes to heart is, okay, yes, we want to make sure we get the right player that fits with the available players on the draft board, but we also want to make sure that we're putting the right people together with this roster, because as much as you think about the time you spend on the floor, 40 games, 40 minutes a day, that's a small portion of what these players truly spend time together. You think of the travel days, dinners, if your team's doing any fun activities for bonding, they spend so much time together in these 4 to 4.5 months that you have to also worry about the types of personalities you're bringing in. Yep. So I think that's another great aspect of why Citron was a focal point for this front office and for a lot of the mock drafts that we saw.
Just to keep everybody up to date here, Anissa Morrow, the 7th pick in the draft, she goes to Connecticut, the forward out of LSU. You're so right, which does beg the question, Megan. We saw the tweets from Arike about accidentally rooting for Paige. Will Aaliyah Edwards out of UConn be able to welcome Sonia Citron? on to her team. I mean, this is the UConn-Notre Dame rivalry. I feel like this could get tenuous. Jamila, what are you doing?
That's going to be a great matchup because now you've got Paige and Arike, and then you've got Aaliyah and Sonia on one
Of course,
team.
but don't forget Big Mama Steph's there ready to go back up on
Exactly. Like there's a lot of moving parts here, and that matchup with the Mystics and the Wings as of late has, in the last couple of, I would say probably last three seasons, has been a really fun matchup, a really fiery matchup, if you will. So now you add in more Irish, more Huskies. That, I mean, you get a Husky and an Irish walk into a bar, you know?
Yeah.
Anything can happen.
We know what happens there. It's the Irish, and they're in a bar. So I do think, though, back to out of our silly analogy land that I would 100% let us into. I think that I spent a lot of time talking about this with Christy earlier, and we've been just kicking it around, talking about it too, as I point off camera to Anthony, who's sitting over there just smiling and wishing he was on camera still. I think the larger context of this draft is fascinating. Knowing they just put a graphic up on ESPN that's like, I think it's 105 of the 235 players in the league, or however, it's not 235 in the league.
156 now.
Yeah, it's
when you add in the fact
now.
they've got the Valkyries, it was
I don't know
144.
where the 235. Maybe I just saw the number wrong, but yeah, 156. But like 105 players or something like that are going to be free agents after this season. And to me, that leads to either one of two paths. You can do what Washington, and it looks like Connecticut, they've got 2 picks. Chicago, they've got 2 picks, plus they had the 2 last year, where it's like we can build a base of young players that can be attractive to those free agents. Or you have teams that are, on some level, recreating what the Miami Heat did back in the day, where it's like, we're going to completely clear the decks, and we're going to have no one on our roster. The Aces, I think, probably going to wind up falling into this category. Kate, one of their draft picks from last year, gets gone to Golden State. And then they don't have a first-round pick this year. We know second-round picks are a 50-50 shot at best to make their teams. They're just going to be able to, like, Asia, you go pick who you want to play with and bring them on back here when this new CBA gets done. I just think that's fascinating. I'm curious your thoughts on how you're seeing kind of this larger, bigger picture of where the league is and how that affects tonight.
Well, I think also, too, there may be some wondering like how the CBA situation also could affect things, because that's kind of in like this limbo fluctuation type of situation. So there's so many factors going into this 2025 season. There's all this, you've got a new team, this influx of young talent, the vets that are still trying, to prove that they can play. And it's not even that they are trying to prove. They can play. Like the fact that there was a possibility of Diana Taurasi still playing this year. And it wasn't until, maybe 2.5 weeks ago that the official word came down from her. And then it's followed by also, too, Elena Deladon, who officially retires. Like, they were still trying to find ways to make themselves available to be on the floor because that's how much they love the game. So you add that in with the influx of all of this talent. You're adding a new team, and then you're going to be adding new teams down the road. So I think it's just putting this franchise, this league in a position for growth at the right time, and not like a quick punch growth. It's happening incrementally, and I think that's really what has been impressive and what they can do to try and sustain. But like, I'm really excited to see what the Mystics then do with what they've got, because you do have, as you mentioned, you do have some vets still around. You have some young talent in Edwards and Austin. Now you're adding some rookies. You think of, they got Sonia and they got Iria Fenn as well too. And you think of what those two type of bring. And I think of Kiki, like you look at what she was able to do at Stanford, such a great career at Stanford.
Yeah.
And then you come back and you are like, you know what, let's go one more time. And I'm going to go to USC. And if not for a horrible situation with the injury to Juju, maybe they are in a completely different situation in the in the NCAA tournament versus what they were in. And I'm really excited to see what she can bring to this roster, how she fits alongside an Aaliyah Edwards and a Shakira Austin, and what that can look like as well, too, because she's such a versatile type of big. What does that look like as they try to establish what Coach Johnson wants to play like, his play style, the types of things he wants to do on the floor? With so much young talent, you're surrounding, a Brittany Sykes as your leader, what does that look like?
I totally agree. I think it's the Mystics are maybe in the most sustainable position of any franchise in the entire sport from a player standpoint because they actually, surely because of the numbers. Like, they have more players on rookie contracts as opposed to these other teams. And that could work out one of two ways. One, this could work magically in these three bigs that people are like, how's the fit going to work? Like, it could work out because they are all versatile enough that it 1,000% could.
They are all very different play styles. So that's the one thing is, yes, they're all bigs, but they all play a very different style. And we got to see it a couple of times prior to Shakira's injury last year with what it could look like with Edwards and Austin playing off of each other and playing together. We know what it has looked like with Edwards and Dolson, because they can, Dolson can stretch the floor.
Right.
So now you get another young, talented type of big. What can that do, and how does that now adjust? But also, too, you now have more bigs on your roster. So when injuries happened last season, and it was happening to, your bigs, it was very tough because then who do you play? Then you've got a situation where it's just Steph Dolson, unfortunately, because then Aaliyah Edwards went down. Yeah. So you've got to also think
hardship
of
players. You're doing the whole deal.
You've also got to think of like, okay, we need to be, as you mentioned, in a position to sustain. And I think that's a lot of why they also made that move earlier today with Samuelson.
Yeah.
Which was very mindful. And I don't think people realize how mindful that was. As much as it's great to get a draft pick in the first round in the 2026 draft, you also were mindful of what this means for Samuelson. You put her in a position on a team that's vying for a championship, and she can help impact that in a win-now situation, but you also think about yourself for the future and trying to sustain what you're trying to build.
So that wraps around nicely to the point I was going to make is if it doesn't work out and the fit is clunky, like, you now have some of the most valuable assets in the league. Because I don't think anyone's – let's say it doesn't work out, and I'll just say Shakira, right? And Shakira winds up being the odd player out here. I don't think anyone's going to look at Shakira Austin and be like, oh, she's not a good player. She's like, oh, Washington doesn't have the need for her. And so they make a trade. They're going to get a ton of value, and she's on a old rookie contract, which is going to cost half of the new rookie contracts. And I think that you see, like, the value of players that can really help you win right now. I mean, I talked about this with Christy earlier. Congrats to Carly in so many ways. I mean, Carly had never signed before last year a full season contract in the WNBA. And that was her 14th, I believe, is the number contract. I should have double-checked my notes before the show from Media Day last year. But 14th contract. In 1 year in Washington, she turned herself into someone that got flipped for a first-round pick. Like, that tells you how valuable some of these types of skill sets are, some of these players are, and what, Washington can provide. And again, you hope that the players work out because especially once you get to, I love Shakira. Like, the person, I don't want to see her leave. But if she does, you know that there's going to be a massive return in something that's going to help the franchise in the long term. And unfortunately, that's just kind of how this business works. But I think either path, they've set themselves up with some flexibility here, no matter how the league turns. Mm-hmm. And we have no idea how this league is going to turn because of the CBA.
Right. And I think that's the interesting thing about what front offices, not just in the W, but front offices in sports, period, have to balance. They have to do that dance of, we want to prepare ourselves for now and what we're trying to build, but as well, too, should what we're trying to build not work, we have a way to pivot. Mm-hmm. And pivot in a positive way versus we do it for the win now. That's all we care about. It doesn't work out. And then we're sitting here like, oh, snap. How do we fix this? What do we do? And we can't get rid of contracts or players.
And you
There's
have
so
to
many
do,
things.
I don't know, let's call it a major deconstruction, which is, not to pick on Brad, but that's what the Wizards had to do was they didn't give themselves a way out. The old regime and Michael and Will got in here and were like, oh, God, this is going to be painful. And now Phoenix is in the same thing with the same guy because that's why no one – and again, not trying to pick on Brad here, but that's why no one in the NBA, not even Steph Curry, has a no-trade clause because you want to, in this sport, give yourself the chance to pivot. And if you don't, it is a bad, bad situation.
It's not necessarily the situation any team would want to be in. And I think that's something you, as a general manager, have in the back of your mind when you're making these decisions, when you're thinking of the picks that you're going to look at, when you're thinking of the players, when you're thinking of putting your coaching staff together. Because the synergy, I go back to the press conference when the Mystics introduced
Who hosted that thing, by the way?
I don't know, some girl named Megan. When the introduction happened, that was the constant thing I kept hearing, and it was also something that you heard from Will Dawkins and Michael Winger. So it's clear of what, with Michael Winger being the overseer and president of Monumental Basketball, you can see the synergy. It's not just on one side. It's happening on both because you are trying to sustain something to not just build a winning culture. You're trying to also build something that people want to come watch, fans want to be part of, players in free agency want to be part of. Draftees in the future are like, I want to get drafted to Washington. And so you think of that. Like, I go back, and I know we're talking Mystics, but saying that, I go back to the NBA draft. Alex Sarr, number 2 pick for the Wizards, said, I want to play in Washington.
Yep.
So now what you're seeing on the Mystics side is something similar in having players say, I want to play for Sidney Johnson, and I want my boss to be Jamila Wideman. Like, that's what you're trying to build. And I think this is where it starts, obviously, tonight with this being their first official draft. And I'm excited to see what they do with these moves and these picks and how they can try to then get ready for the season and then see where they go as the season goes on.